Hello there, welcome once again to our science lesson. We are still exploring the topic responses, but we have said responses or response in the body is carried out by different organs. We have looked at the eye, the ear, and then another very important organ is the skin. Now if you look at animals, the first thing that you encounter is the skin. In fact, it's the largest organ of all of those organs because it covers nearly everywhere. So because of that, it has several other functions apart from what we are going to emphasize on in terms of response. It has other functions of the skin. So one important function of the skin, when there are changes in for example, in the external environment in terms of temperature, it is the skin that will respond first. So one of the function is temperature regulation. Temperature regulation. So how is this going to be accomplished? This one is going to be accomplished through various means. For example, under the skin there's high supply of blood capillaries. When it is too cold, what happens? The blood capillaries under the skin is going to constrict. When it constricts, it's going to supply less blood on the skin. When less blood is supplied on the skin, we shall have less diffusion of it to the external environment. So that process where the blood capillaries constrict so that less blood flows under the skin is called vasoconstriction. So one mechanism in which the skin will regulate temperature is through vasoconstriction. And what is this vasoconstriction? Is where blood capillaries constricts. Blood capillaries constricts. And in so doing, less blood flows under the skin. So in the process, less heat is lost. Less heat will be lost to the surrounding. Another way is through vasodilation. When the temperature is high, what happens is that the body must lose the excess heat. So the skin, being the largest part of the organ, still will be involved through a process called vasodilation. Vasodilation. Now vasodilation is thus the opposite of vasoconstriction. The blood capillaries, the lumen, is going to increase. Blood capillaries dilate. When blood capillaries dilate, it will allow more blood to flow under the skin. More blood flows under the skin. The effect of this, heat will be lost. More heat is lost. More heat is lost to the surrounding. More heat is lost to the surrounding. So that is how the skin is involved in temperature regulation. The other function of the skin Number 2 is protection. Protection. It provides protection to the underlying tissues. Underlying tissues. We have cells, tissues, and even organs. So how this one happens is because of some structures that we shall see as we look at the cross-section of the skin. We have a structure called the conified layer. Conified layer. So a skin is able to perform the role of protection due to conified layer. Conified layer is made up of dead cells. So those dead cells are usually wax and water proof. So it's going to, due to conified layer as being made up of dead cells, it's going to protect against some few things, like against invasion by pathogens. Most of the pathogens will thrive in living cells, but because the conified layer is made up of dead cells, pathogens cannot survive in those dead cells. So in the process, it's going to protect the underlying tissues from invasion by pathogens. Also from mechanical damage. From mechanical damage. Underlying tissues are protected from mechanical damage due to this hard conified layer. You realize that this layer in some parts of the body is so thick, like under the soles of your feet or at the palms of your hands. Because of continuous friction and wearing, the conified layer is usually thick than the rest of the parts. So from pathogen, from mechanical damage, and also from excessive loss of water. Underlying tissues from excessive loss of water. So it's going to protect underlying tissues from these three factors: pathogens, mechanical damage, excessive loss of water. And that one happens because conified layer, apart from these cells being dead, they also have wax. They are waxy. So anything wax is waterproof. So because of that, is going to prevent or protect underlying tissues from excessive water loss. The other function of the skin includes forming a storage site. Storage site, specifically for fats. Storage site for fats. Remember, under the skin, as we shall be going through the structure of the skin, we have a structure called the adipose tissue. In the adipose tissue we have stored fats or lipids. So it's acting as a storage site. The fourth role is synthesis. The skin is able to synthesize vitamin D. Vitamin D, especially when one is exposed to sunlight. When one is exposed to sunlight. So again, it is a very important function because we know that vitamin D is important for strengthening of bones. The other roles include sensation. Sensation. Sensation means detecting changes in the environment. Now, most of the changes that we detect around our environment are due to the skin. You realize that even if somebody does not have good vision or is blind, one of the major sense that will be very important is for that one of the skin, through touch. You'll touch some objects, you'll be able to feel the differences, and in the process, someone can be able to tell that this is a chair, this is maybe something else, depending on the kind of things that he's touching. If there is change in temperature, again, it's the skin that will tell you that actually there's change in temperature. Pain, if you step on a sharp object, you'll feel that there is pain because the skin is functioning as a sense organ. So this is where I want to dwell, sensation. So it can sense pain, it can sense touch, it can sense pressure, it can sense heat or cold, that is temperature. And then we have other functions. The other very important one is screening the underlying tissues from harmful UV rays. Screens the underlying tissues. Underlying tissues from harmful UV rays. UV rays, the major source is the sun. But if underlying tissues or cells are exposed to UV rays, we are going to have some problems, like maybe development of cancer, skin cancer, melanoma. So the skin usually screens the underlying tissues from UV rays due to some pigment called melanin. So there's a pigment in the skin called melanin, which is secreted by special types of cells in the skin called melanocytes. So those people that have less melanin, for instance, in people that are suffering from albinism, they usually have problems with the UV rays that comes from the sun, because the UV rays usually stimulates excess or extra mitotic processes in the Malpighian layer, and in the process, someone will develop skin cancer. But our major emphasis is sensation. So before we look at it, let us just look at the structure of the skin, the simple structure of the skin. So the skin, if I may use that one as a cross-section, so it's made up of the upper layer, confined layer, but it has that part, they have follicles arising from the lower part. So we have several parts, but we can look at what we have. So the upper layer is called the conified layer. Conified layer. What follows is granular layer. And then this layer is called Malpighian layer. So these three makes the epidermis. Makes the epidermis. Then we have other structures here. We have this part, the nerve ending, free nerve ending. Free nerve endings. We have that part called the Pacinian corpuscle. That's also a nerve. We have other nerves called the Meissner's corpuscle. This nerve called the Raffin's end organ. And we have other parts that are not actually nerves, that's sweat gland. We have the hair follicle. Hair follicle, and this layer here, subcutaneous fat layer. Subcutaneous layer. Subcutaneous layer. So we have several parts. Then here we have a nerve called hair plexus. Hair plexus. So for this purpose of this lesson, I want us to concentrate on these parts: the nerve ending, the Pacinian corpuscle, we have the hair plexus, the Meissner's corpuscle, the Raffin's end organ. But we cannot forget to mention other parts. Like here we have this part that holds onto the hair follicle called the erector pili muscle. Erector pili muscle. And then this part called the sebaceous gland. Sebaceous gland. So slightly we can go through some parts, and then the major parts we shall write something on it. So conified layer, granular layer, Malpighian layer forms the epidermis. But this part where we have the nerve endings, the sweat glands, the hair follicle, the sebaceous gland, we have blood capillaries. Can just show using that. Blood capillaries forms the deeper part of the skin called dermis. And then we have the lower layer called subcutaneous fat layer. Subcutaneous layer. So we have already said something about conified layer. Conified layer is the one that gives protection to the underlying tissues from excessive water loss, mechanical damage, invasion by pathogens. But we have the granular layer. Granular layer has actively dividing cells. Confined layer has dead cells, so they wear off. Even when you are taking bath, those cells slough off from your body or from your skin, but they are replaced by the granular cells from the granular layer, actively dividing cells. Then we have the Malpighian layer, the one that contains, Malpighian layer contains melanocytes. Melanocytes, they secrete the pigment melanin that gives your skin, for instance, the Caucasians, they have a dark skin due to high density of melanin. Then in the dermis, we have several parts. I want to mention the nerves later. We have the sweat glands. Sweat glands, they usually secrete sweat. We know that the role of sweat, sweat is being secreted through this pore on the skin. It will be getting involved in excretion, urea, lactic acid, and sometimes traces of ammonia are removed from the body through the sweat glands. And also, sweat glands removes excess water. And then we have the sebaceous gland. Sebaceous gland secretes a fluid called sebum. Secretes sebum. Sebum makes the skin to be flexible. Otherwise, if it's going to be dry, it's going to crack and there'll be problems. So sebum makes the skin to be supple, soft, supple, so that it becomes flexible. I've mentioned a muscle here, erector pili muscle. Erector pili muscles also is involved in temperature regulation. It's going to alter the position of the hair on the skin. If it is cold, the hair is supposed to stand on the body. That's why you develop goose pimples. The erector pili muscles is going to contract when it is cold. It pulls this hair follicle on this side, and then the hair stands straight on the skin. And in the process, it traps more air. Air is a poor conductor of heat. So less heat will be lost to the surrounding. But where I want us to concentrate are the remaining parts. Subcutaneous layer, we have said, is the one that contains fats. And fats are also important because they hold skin onto other structures. Like if we have a muscle, this is skin, there's a muscle here. For that skin to be attached onto the muscle down there, fats will come in, holding the skin onto muscles. And then also the fats, they provide insulation against excessive heat loss. But I want us to concentrate on the nerves to find out what are their main role, because we are looking at responses. The bit that we want to look at is sensation using those nerves. So skin performs the role of sensation. In other words, acts as a sense organ. It acts as a sense organ. So for it to act as a sense organ, we must have some specialized nerve cells. Has specialized nerve cells. For those purpose, it is supposed to sense the following: touch, pain, pressure, temperature, and so forth. So the following nerve cells are involved. One of them is free nerve ending. Free nerve ending. Free nerve ending, from our diagram, you realize that it is very close. In fact, it gets into the epidermis. Free nerve endings usually detects changes or detects pain. It's the one that is involved in detecting pain. So if you step on a sharp object, the part that will be stimulated to generate a nerve impulse that will flow to the brain is the free nerve ending. We have the Pacinian corpuscle. Pacinian corpuscle is also a nerve cell or a nerve fiber that is involved in detecting pressure. Deep, detects deep pressure. Detects deep pressure. We have other nerve endings, thermoreceptors. Thermoreceptors. Thermoreceptors detect change in temperature. In other words, heat being when it is hot or when it is cold. We have the Mesanous corpuscle. Mesanous. Mesanous corpuscle. This one detects touch. You also have hair plexus. Hair plexus are nerve endings, but they are attached to hair follicle. Now, most of the senses, or when somebody touches you, the first part that will be displaced is the hairs or the hair follicle. So when the hair follicle, if this is the hair follicle, and then we are saying we have that plexus attached to it. So when this part is displaced, the hair plexus will be stimulated, and you realize that actually you have been touched. If it's an insect walking or moving on your body, you realize that. So that one again, hair plexus, is for touch. Detects touch. Then the last one is the raphins. Raphins and organ. This is again just associated group of nerve cells, but again for purpose of detecting change in temperature and specifically when it is cold. So these are the main structures in the skin that are involved for purpose of sensation, detecting changes in the environment, pain, pressure, touch, changes in temperature. So the point of emphasis are these structures, although we have other structures under the skin which you are supposed to cover at a different level. So to prove that the skin is actually a sense organ, you can do an experiment. In fact, this experiment you can perform with a friend. You can do an experiment with a friend just to show that the skin is a sense organ. So the procedure, you're going to follow this procedure. So one, using a ball point, you draw a grid of small squares at the back of the hand. So if this is the hand, so don't worry about the drawing, but most important part is this. So you draw a grid. A grid is just a figure with very many squares or boxes. So that's how it will appear. This is how it's going to appear. Then the next procedure, so you can do this on a hand of either a friend or your hand. You must be two of you. The next procedure, second, get a Bristol. Get a Bristol and hold it with a forceps. Bristol simply means, for example, if you have horse, you can substitute with any horse air. Get a Bristol and hold it with a forceps. So if that's the forceps, that's the Bristol. Remember, horsehair is fine. So this is the horse hair. Then 3, with your eyes closed, let another person press. Let another person press the tip of the Bristol, onto one of the squares. Onto one of the squares. So you can pick any part. Your eyes are closed. You can pick any part like that point, and then he presses. Remember, the horse hair is very soft. So if you feel any sensation, that's the other procedure, you nod your head. This one is showing that at the end of it, you are going to find out what it shows. That not all parts of the skin are going to be having the same sensation. Number 4, procedure 4, repeat the same in all other squares. Repeat the same in all other squares. Then number 5, the experimenter should also mark on a separate paper, with a tick, when you nod, and with a cross when you do not nod. So in other words, The experimenter will also have a creed on a paper. You have your hand with a creed, and then on a paper like that, separately. Such that if with the same number of squares, your creed on the hand and the creed on the paper should have the same number of squares. If the experimenter touches at that point and you do not nod your head because you have not felt anything, he puts there a cross. If the experimenter touches at that point and you nod your head, he ticks that point on the paper. So several points may be marked on your hand, on your palm, and others maybe there'll be no sensation. So this is a simple experiment that you can do. This is an experiment just to show that not all parts of the skin have equal sensation. Some are more sensitive while others are less sensitive. Specifically, if it is on your hand, those areas that are close to the palm, they'll be less sensitive. That part will be less sensitive as compared to that part, because at the palm is made up of conified layer. Every part is conified layer, but we have thicker conified layer at the palms than at the rest of the body. So the role of this experiment is simply to help you understand or illustrate that we have some parts of the skin that are more sensitive while others are less sensitive. So you can repeat this experiment in other parts of the body. You can even choose your thigh. You can choose any other part, like on the abdomen where the skin is open for you to get. If even on the finger, you can do the same on the finger or at the tip of the finger, or the skin in the neck region. You can do in several other parts to identify the more sensitive parts of your body or of your skin. So let us look at the following questions. First question is this: list some functions of the skin. Some functions of the skin. So we have mentioned several functions of the skin. We shall not forget the very basic one that we have looked today was sensation. Skin is involved in sensation. Now we have said for skin to act as a sense organ, it has several nerve cells to perform different functions or to respond to different stimuli. We have mentioned, for instance, the Pacinian corpuscle. We have said the Pacinian corpuscle is the one that detects pressure. We have also mentioned other parts like free nerve ending. Free nerve ending. This detects pain. Detects pain. We have mentioned the Raffin's organ for detecting touch. We have also mentioned thermoreceptors. Thermoreceptors for detecting change in temperature, if it is hot, if it is cold. We mentioned the Messainas Meiscenas. Meiscenas. We said meiscenas is also for touch, and the hair plexus for touch. So this is one role, but for it to be appreciated, we have to find out what are those structures under the skin that performs the following. So it's a sense organ because of these several structures. The other function is temperature regulation. So the role of skin is temperature regulation. We have seen how this happens through two processes: vasodilation and you can remember vasodilation, that process by which blood capillaries dilate, the lumen increases so that more blood flows under the skin, allowing more heat to be lost to the surrounding. And another process called vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction, where the lumen of the blood capillaries decreases. When it decreases, less blood will flow under the skin. Therefore, less heat is lost to the surrounding. We have also said that it performs role of synthesis, and one major substance synthesized by the skin is vitamin D. That's why it is important for you sometimes to get outdoors. If there's sunshine outside, enjoy the sunshine as you enjoy. The skin is also performing the role of synthesis. We have said the skin, in fact, is the most important one, protection. Protects the body against invasion by pathogens. We have cited a very important structure, the conified layer, that has dead cells. Pathogens do not, most of the pathogens do not survive in dead cells. So because of that, it's going to protect against invasion by pathogens. And then we also said that against mechanical damage. Mechanical damage. So underlying tissues are protected from mechanical damage due to some parts of the skin, the conified layer. You realize that those parts of the skin that are exposed to high friction rate, they're usually thick, like the soles of your feet is usually thicker, the palms of your hands are thicker, so that the tissues under the soles are not damaged. We have also said that it will protect against excessive loss of water. Excessive loss of water, because the conified layer is waxy, and wax is waterproof. Sometimes when somebody has been burnt, the major problem is the loss of water and invasion by pathogens. So that's why we need skin crafting, so that the skin is replaced very fast, or a means of replacing the skin very fast. We have people like Fiona Wood that are highly recognized in Australia. Fiona Wood is one who discovered the quickest way of replacing the skin that has been damaged. He discovered what we call the spray-on. The spray-on skin. The spray-on skin. Instead of culturing the skin in the laboratory condition, that one will take some time. But once we have cells that are ready for covering the place that has been burnt, you just spray, and it is the work of a very prominent scientist, Fiona Wood. We have other like storage. We have identified that the skin can store some substances like fats. The fats are stored under subcutaneous fat layer. And the last one, which is also very important, excretion. Excretion. We have said under the skin we have structures called the sweat glands. Sweat glands. Sweat glands, they secrete sweat. Composition of sweat include nitrogenous waste product like ammonia, lactic acid, and urea. Also excess water. So when one sweat is coming out, but together with waste metabolic products. Remember, excretion is that process of removing waste metabolic products from the body. Question 2. Name the parts of the skin that Roman 1 secretes sebum. We have said the skin is usually flexible, soft, and for that purpose it does not crack due to a secretion called sebum. So what is that structure and in the skin that secretes sebum? If you go back to your diagram, we were able to identify that part. We called it the sebaceous gland. Sebaceous gland. Number 2, name the parts of the skin that detects change in temperature. Change in temperature. We gave a name. You can remember that name. We said they are called thermoreceptors. Thermoreceptors. Another question, name the parts of the skin that replaces worn out cells of conified layer. Of conified layer. We said conified layer is the uppermost layer made up of dead cells. They usually wear off. Even when you take bath, they slough off, but they are replaced. So what is that structure under the skin that replaces those cells? If you go back to your diagram again, that layer that's just next to conified layer, and that one is granular layer. Granular layer. Name parts of the skin that synthesizes vitamin D. We said one role of skin is synthesis of vitamin D, but we have specific parts. If we move from up down, we have conified layer, granular layer, Malpighian layer, and in that layer we have cells called melanocytes, and together it's going to trap UV rays with other cells to synthesize vitamin D. So vitamin D is synthesized in this layer called Malpighian layer. Malpighian layer. Question number 3. Complete the sentences below. 3A. Complete the sentences. Complete the sentences below. Part A. Free nerve endings. Free nerve endings wrapped around hair follicle will give sense to, or a sense of, will give sense of. Now the key word in that statement is free nerve ending. So free nerve ending, what's the role of free nerve ending? We said they detect some stimulus, but what is the stimulus? So that's the dash that you're supposed to fill. Sense of, I know you can remember, sense of pain. Then B, each type of receptor usually only detect one type of. Each type of receptor usually detect one type of dash. So we have had several, the Messinus corpuscles, the Pacinian corpuscles, free nerve endings, thermoreceptors. So all of them are going to detect change in the environment, but the changes are going to be different. Those changes in the environment, we usually give them a name. So each type of receptor usually detects one type of stimulus. If there are many, we call them stimuli. Plural form, stimuli, singular stimulus. Then C, dash response to change in temperature. Dash response to change in temperature. So which part of the skin responds to change in temperature? i.e. heat and cold. So which part of those nerve cells? We said they are called thermoreceptors. Thermoreceptors. Then part D, hair follicles are located in the dash layer. Hair follicles are located in the dash layer. From the diagram, you can see where hair follicles arises from. Where hair follicles arises from. It arises from the dermis, located in the layer called dermis. We have epidermis. Epi means above or upon. Then below is now the dermis. Part E, the top or outermost layer of the skin is the top or outermost layer of the skin is the top or outermost. We have already given that name several times. Epi, then dermis. And remember, these are two words. Epi means above, or upon, on. Then dermis is another word for covering or skin. Covering. So the above covering, the epidermis, the uppermost. The last part of those questions, the subcutaneous fat layer, the subcutaneous fat layer provides insulation to help control body dash. When you talk of insulation, it simply means either there are two ways, either it is energy or heat or electricity, but for this purpose it is heat to control body temperature. Control body temperature. Then the last question is an assignment for you. With your friend, illustrate an experiment. Illustrate an experiment to show that different parts of the skin have different sensation. Have different sensations. So what you'll do, we have already outlined an experiment in our lesson. So you can just go through that with your friend, testing several parts of the body, the skin under the, in the neck region, the skin on your thigh, the skin on your leg, the skin on your hand, and do that experiment with your friend. So I hope you have enjoyed this lesson. In our next lesson, we shall look at other sense organs, the nose and the tongue. Welcome.